no doubt, rabid side of Tottenham's fan base will be screaming blue murder for Daniel Levy to leave the club and for someone else to come along and buy it. And of course, that just happens overnight, doesn't it? This is One-to-One with Simon Jordan. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Of course, keep leaving the brilliant questions in the comment section below. But let's get on with this week's show. I mean, I think ultimately at Tottenham, the person that runs the football club's got to take the ultimate responsibility. So Daniel has that honour. And clearly, not making changes or leaving structures in place that were part of a structure that was becoming divisive in the relationship with Antonio Conte doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Availability of alternatives may play into it, but I don't think it's the greatest of decisions that Daniel's ever made. I do think that one has to look, and I'm not going to disappear down rabbit holes because people want me to and everything is binary. You have to look at the group of players for that performance against Newcastle on the weekend. You have to look at the coaching setup and who's there. But predominantly, if nothing else, the players should have some pride and responsibility in their performances. You can blame systems and a coach can come out and take the responsibility, but at the end of the day, if the players don't execute and bother themselves and avail themselves of a bit of professional pride, you're always going to find yourself in this position. But Daniel has to take responsibility for the overall direction of the club. His sole focus in life, as the relationship deteriorated with Conte, was which is the better decision, to keep him in place as he grumbled and bitched and moaned and achieve the top four and finish it at the end of the season when his contract finished, or to cut him loose. Now, cutting him loose was the gift that Daniel had and the one that he chose, but it was primarily based upon the fact that Conte had set the building on fire and pretty much said that everybody in it was worthless. So with that in mind, it wasn't really much of a decision that Daniel had to make. Now the next decision he has to make is who does he put in place to hold the fort to achieve the ultimate outcome of top four. And the Spurs fans can go rabid about the fact that that shouldn't be the only ambition. But there are plenty of clubs in the Premier League that would like top four, that have spent just as much as Tottenham Hotspur, and ultimately will feel that they have just as much right to be in the top four as Tottenham Hotspur. In most instances that I refer to, or some of instances certainly, they spent more than Tottenham Hotspur. But of course, all roads lead to the constant whip that Daniel will have to face, which is the fact they don't win anything, and so he should. Because Tottenham's only achievements can't be to build great stadiums and great training grounds, and to compete in the Premier League, there should be just a little bit more, and he has to square that circle. But look, I mean, losing 6-1 to Newcastle and the manner in which Newcastle played, you've got a perfect storm. Tottenham are completely and utterly out of form and out of understanding their responsibility of the fans, if nothing else, of the fans they represent. And Newcastle were highly motivated and highly charged based upon predominantly a very strong season and a bad result against Aston Villa. Now, that doesn't excuse anybody. And it's very easy just to point your finger at one set of people. And I find it difficult not to find myself in a situation where it sounds like I'm defending Daniel, but I know football managers and I know football players because I've had plenty of them. And they will always seemingly skate away from the responsibility, and whilst the person at the top will never have any excuse, and if there's success, it'll be everyone else's, and if there's failures, it's ultimately the person at the top's to own that. And that's just part of the territory, and people will say, if Daniel's profiting out of Tottenham Hotspur, so he should be. But, you know, the ultimate equation was, did Daniel help his situation by leaving in place Stellini, who I don't think is the brightest of individuals, and Ryan Mason, who's a thoroughly nice fella, but I'm not entirely sure you'd go out of the trenches for him. So with that in mind, I think Daniel owns this situation, owns these performances, and of course, just when you think things can't get any worse, they duly do. So with all that in mind, the pressure will rain down. The no doubt rabid side of Tottenham's fan base will be screaming blue murder for Daniel Levy to leave the club and for someone else to come along and buy it. And of course, that just happens overnight, doesn't it? And forget the fact that the club is financially stable, has been for a period of time because of Joe Lewis and because of Daniel Levy. But unless we get a Middle Eastern owner owning our football clubs in this day and age that are prepared to fire as much money around as it takes to be successful, then they're not the greatest of owners. But look, bottom line is everybody at Tottenham, from the guy that walked out the door, believe me when I say Conte walked out or engineered a reverse constructive dismissal, through to the players, through to the current coaching staff, through to the owner, are all culpable in Tottenham Hotspur being fifth. And what was a dreadful performance against Newcastle, and everyone can cop it for that. And Daniel needs to fix it, and he needs to fix it properly. He needs to fix it with a manager that he can clearly work with, one that doesn't want to be temperamental every time he doesn't get what he wants, one that actually wants the job and sees it as a great job to have. And all roads may lead back to previous incarnations. I don't think they do, but it's now key for Daniel with this rising temperature in sports, specifically football, of fans feeling that there's a certain way teams should play and a certain outlook and disposition from their owners. Daniel is going to have to stand in front of this tide, can't be King Canute. He's going to have to either get washed away by it or roll with it and do something better than has been done in recent years. Why would it be bad for football if Manchester City go on and win the treble? It would be no worse for football than when Manchester United went on and won the treble. There's an argument, and I made the argument last week, that all boats rise in a high tide, and Manchester City are that high tide. Their brand of football has elevated other teams in the division to be more competitive. It's made the division, the Premier League, even stronger to some respects in the brand of football that it plays, because the physicality element of the Premier League has been diminished by the need to obviously wrap players in cotton wool and not have any tackling in the game, seemingly. So no, I don't think it's bad. I think if they're the best team in Europe and they win the Champions League, which Manchester City must do, because it's part and parcel of the achievements that a big football club has, and Manchester City are no doubt a big football club now, then I think it's about celebrating the best. Yes, I don't agree with Man City's conduct in the past. I don't think they conduct themselves in the same way, because I don't think they need to now. I don't like the nature of how they will react. Everyone reacts robustly, or should, to allegations. But I do believe Man City have breached rules. I do believe it's been proven they have. And I do believe that they should be sanctioned. But I don't believe that they shouldn't be celebrated, because on the field, their brand of football, whether you think Pep Guardiola is a smug, self-aggrandising individual, I'm not sure I do. I think he's an elite football manager that wins games and does what he says he's going to do, which is produces a wonderful team that dominates the English Premier League. That was his job. Next part of his job was to win the Champions League. He's yet to do that. So I think we should celebrate English dominance, specifically if it's in Europe. And I think that we should celebrate our champions. We've got plenty of other, detractors. We've got people around the domestic leagues in Europe looking to take a pop at our Premier League. I don't think that we should be, looking to suggest that because one team wins the FA Cup, wins the Premier League, and wins the Champions League. And by the way, if they win the Premier League, it won't be a 20-point stretch. It'll be single points if they manage to overcome Arsenal, or maybe 4 or 5 points if the wheels come off Arsenal, as they seemingly seem to be doing at this moment in time. So no, I don't think that they should be condemned. I don't think we should be saying it's bad for English football. I think we should say to other teams, rise with the tide and compete. If I was Harry Kane, I would have done many things. First of all, I'd have got myself a decent agent and put myself in a position to be able to give myself choices in the past, so that when it came to me actually wanting to leave Tottenham Hotspur, I was able to do so, because I'd negotiated deals properly, I'd put release clauses in, and I was in a situation where I could actually fly the coop and no one would have begrudged it because of the job that I'd done previously. If I'm Harry Kane now, I'm in part of a side that managed to steal defeat from the jaws of victory in FA Cup semi-finals, not turn up in Champions League finals, and miss out on opportunities to win the league, with all due respect to Leicester City. So I'm part of that. And of course my contribution has been a stellar part, because I've been scoring the goals, but I'm part of the team, I'm not an individual, I'm a sum of all my parts as a football club. I think he finds himself in a slightly invidious position, because we're now asking what would Harry Kane do given this awful capitulation of Tottenham Hotspur from 4th to 5th, and this terrible evisceration of the team and the club by Antonio Conte. And don't believe for one second that Conte, when he was having his rants and raving behind the scenes, because what we saw in the public domain was probably superseded what was going on behind the closed doors. Don't believe he probably didn't include Kane in that, because that was the way Conte wanted to operate to get out of the club. If I'm Harry Kane, I'm in a difficult position, because I know that I've got one move left in me. And if that move is to go and win something, it looks unlikely that Tottenham Hotspur in the next couple of years are going to win something, despite the fact that I thought they might under Antonio Conte, but a different Antonio Conte, not the divisive, destructive individual that rocked up the Spurs doing them a favour, but the Antonio Conte that once upon a time wanted to build things and was prepared to accept the fact that not everything you get is what you want sometimes in life, and why should football be any different? But for Harry Kane, my gut feel is that unless someone is prepared to break the bank for him, then I don't see him leaving Tottenham this season. And I don't know where he goes as other options become more viable for clubs. Does he go to Chelsea? I don't see that. Does he go to Arsenal? I most certainly don't see that. Why does he go to Man City to play second fiddle to Erling Haaland? Does he go to Liverpool? Again, look at Liverpool's front line and say possibly, maybe, but unlikely. So where does he go? Does he go to Newcastle? Or does he go into Europe? What would be the point of that? Winning the Bundesliga with Bayern Munich would mean precisely what to someone that's an Englishman that comes from English football? I'm not suggesting we should all be little Englanders, but I'm just saying that you put all those permutations into the mix, all roads leading back to the next situation at Tottenham, which is a decent managerial appointment, a new contract for Harry Kane, which takes him above the £250,000 a week he's probably on now, and that may well be the outcome. So I don't know, I'm not entirely sure that Harry Kane, besides his absolute acumen on a pitch, is a leader in other aspects of it, otherwise he'd have done different contracts in different times. So I think, much against probably what people think, that Harry Kane may well end up staying at Spurs. Do I think Arsenal have bottled the league? No, I don't think Arsenal have bottled the league. I think they caught a moment with Liverpool where Liverpool were just irresistible and could have done what they did to Arsenal to any team in world football. Whether at the spark point was Granit Xhaka having a confrontation with Trent Alexander-Arnold that got everybody up, or whether it was just Liverpool arose and awoke from their seemingly endless slumber this season and decided to play like the Liverpool side that we've been used to seeing over the last couple of years. But I think Arsenal of previous incarnations would have lost that game, even though they were 2-0 up. I think where they find themselves disappointed is in the last two results against West Ham and Southampton. Neither one of those games are gimmies, but the Southampton one should have been. And you have to suggest that certain things are catching up with them. Do I want to categorise it as bottled it? I'm not sure that I do, because I think ultimately there's 11 players of varying different distinctions with Premier League winners in amongst their mix in Zinchenko and Gabriel Jesus. You've got elite international players playing in that team. I think the key component has been possibly the loss of Saliba. That's unsettled them defensively, which means they're giving away more goals than they have done historically. Look, all roads in my mind have always led to the Etihad on Wednesday. And if they come out of that game with a result that isn't a defeat, I still think Arsenal can win the league. I think the balance of probabilities have now shifted to Man City, but notwithstanding that, I think it would be a very unfair, and I know I'm quite capable of being harsh, but a harsh observation to say that Arsenal have bottled it because they've drawn a couple of games in recent weeks at the business end of the season where one side in Liverpool have been irresistible and Southampton and West Ham, those are the conundrums, those are the circles I can't square for the purpose of my argument. But I'm not going to get into the territory. I'll leave that to the Arsenal fan TVs of the world to criticise their own club and their own team. But I certainly think there's lots more about Arsenal and this development stage that they're at that either wins them a Premier League, which will be remarkable, or gets them close. That should give lots of people at Arsenal lots of comfort to build and keep building and adding more depth and quality to the squad so that if they do come up short, then at certain stages of the season next year, when injuries become prevalent, they've got more depth to be able to overcome. Right, that's it for this week's edition of 1-to-1. Don't forget to let me know your views on Spurs, Man City's pursuit of the treble, and Arsenal's charge towards the title, perhaps. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to keep leaving the questions in the comment section below. But I'll see you next week.